You know, folks say time heals all wounds, but sometimes it just tucks them away until some fool comes along and jabs right at the scar. And that's exactly how it felt when that first envelope showed up in my mailbox, all shiny and official looking, like it was daring me to ignore it. I'd hung up my badge as a land fraud investigator after 15 years of watching families get steamrolled by greedy developers and crooked bureaucrats, the final kick in the gut being a case where an old couple lost their cherry farm to some shady rezoning scam that no one bothered to question. So I cashed out my pension, added a chunk from my old man's estate, and snagged 60 acres of wild backcountry in southern Montana, an old Forest Service plot that had been off the books for years, untouchable, undocumented in all the right ways, just raw pines and ridges where I could finally breathe without someone else's rules choking the air. I didn't just stake a claim. I built it from the ground up over 3 grueling summers, hauled logs by hand, laid a stone foundation that could outlast a blizzard, framed the cabin with timber I felled myself, and carved a sign over the door, Harlan Heights, after my dad who'd lost his spread to a similar mess back in the day, vowing I'd never let history repeat. For 7 solid years, it was pure solitude. The elk wandered close, the neighbors kept their distance out of respect, or maybe a healthy dose of wariness, and I kept a Remington 870 over the hearth, more for coyotes than company, though it reminded me of the old life where facts and force sometimes danced too close. Then that Tuesday hit, coffee still hot in my mug as I slid open the letter from Golden Pine Estates HOA, some outfit I'd never heard of, demanding I show up for a boundary compliance review, like my land was suddenly their backyard, their words dripping with that smug certainty born from boardroom power trips, assuming loners like me would fold without a fight. I chuckled at first, but it soured quick, rereading the fine print about fines and seizures, feeling that old investigator's itch flare up, the one that whispered this wasn't random. This was calculated greed, HOA types eyeing untamed acres for their gated dreams, motivated by fat profits from flipping wilderness into cookie-cutter lots. By midday, gravel crunched up my trail, and there they were, 4 of them in starched khakis and logo polos, led by this sharp-featured woman with a haircut like a helmet, clipboard in one hand, entitlement in the other. "Susan Grant," she announced, voice clipped and confident. "We're here for the survey, Mr. Harlan. Nothing major, just marking alignments for our expansion." They stepped forward like they owned the dirt, one guy unrolling a tape measure, another snapping photos with a chest cam muttering, "We'll standardize this slope. Conforms to code or it goes." I didn't yell. I just turned, grabbed the Remington, held it low and loose, barrel earthward, and stepped back out, watching their faces drain. Susan stammered, "You're threatening us? We'll have the law on you." I kept steady, voice even. "Call 'em. I will too. Explain your trespass without a warrant, and I'll lay out your fraud play by play." They scattered like spooked quail, one tripping on a root, Susan hissing over her shoulder. "This isn't over. You're isolating yourself from progress." Her words laced with that deep-seated fear of losing control, the kind that drives folks to bully because their empire's built on paper-thin authority. That lit something in me, not rage, but a quiet resolve, the kind that simmers from knowing I'd seen this dance before. HOA manipulators twisting maps to gobble land, driven by personal gain and a god complex over community harmony. 2 days later, another letter landed, this one plain and stamped with a county seal, summoning me for encroachment violations. But something felt off, the inspector's name ringing no bells, so I drove to the courthouse, confirmed it was a slick forgery, the clerk shaking her head. "Someone's playing dress-up with official ink, Jack." It hit me then. This was no bluff. They were forging to force compliance, preying on isolation to fabricate a takeover. My neighbor, Hank Riley, a grizzled Korean War vet with a cabin down the draw, rang me up that evening, voice gravelly. "You get the perfume-scented BS too? They offered me $2,000 to sign over my trail rights. Told him where to stick it." He shared stories from others, like old widow Clara on oxygen, trembling as HOA suits badgered her about aesthetic violations on her faded porch, their motives clear. Build fake consensus, intimidate the vulnerable to pad their expansion case, all for resale riches. I didn't panic. I documented, rigging solar cams along the perimeter, capturing everything in high-def cloud-backed, so no accident could erase it. Sure enough, midnight alerts pinged. 2 shadows tampering with my well pump, one fumbling a wrench, the other whispering plans. I flipped the floods and speakers, my recorded voice booming. Private land, recorded and reported. Smile for the sheriff. They bolted, faces fuzzy but builds matching Susan's crew, adding to my growing file of sabotage attempts, their desperation showing in sloppy moves born from overconfidence. A week on, real badges rolled up, deputies flanking Susan's gleaming Tahoe, one unrolling a restriction order, riddled with bogus cords and no judge's scrawl. I met him on the porch, tablet in hand, streaming live to my lawyer in Billings, cameras whirring from every angle, even a birdhouse hidey hole, as Susan smirked. This ends your resistance, Harlan. Community progress waits for no man. I unfolded the paper, pointed out the flaws. Fake as a $3 bill, Susan. You're abusing badges for your land grab. The lead deputy, Ramirez, shifted uneasy. We're just assessing. But I cut deep. Assessing fraud? You're on tape. Smile. Susan's eyes flashed fury. You'll regret this isolation. No one's with you. Her voice cracking with the panic of a queen watching her throne wobble, rooted in a marriage of convenience to her developer hubby, funneling HOA cash through shells for personal kickbacks. That's when the counterpunch landed. I looped in Assistant DA Elena Vargas, a bulldog I'd crossed paths with on a timber scam years back. She dove into my evidence pile, uncovering the rot. Forged annex forms, bribes to neighbors, a shell firm tied to Susan's spouse siphoning funds for consulting, even quiet federal claims on old ranger lines to blur boundaries, all driven by their hunger for a mega-development payday. It built slow but sure, me hiking perimeters, logging intrusions, Hank and Clara adding affidavits about the harassment that preyed on their loneliness, until the chopper thrummed overhead one dawn, Elena calling, "Warrants served, we're raiding." I stayed put, sipping coffee as reports trickled. Offices sealed, Susan cuffed mid-meeting, spreadsheets spilling secrets of premeditated grabs, emails joking about softening the hillbillies with visual nuisances, me, reduced to a blight in their blueprints, their greed exposed as a family affair rotting from the top. The trial unfolded like a slow-burn thriller, courtroom humming with locals who'd felt the HOA's squeeze. I testified in boots and flannel, USB in pocket, reciting Supreme Court precedents on property's sacred bundle, watching Susan shrink as witnesses piled on, Clara wheezing, "They scared an old lady for her shutters," Hank growling, "Cowards in polos, mafia without guts." Guilty verdicts hammered down, fraud, conspiracy, the works. Susan got 10 years, her cronies 8 apiece, HOA dissolved, assets auctioned to fund a defense kitty for folks like us. I snagged their old HQ plot cheap, bulldozed it flat in a dusty afternoon, the backhoes roar like sweet vindication, leaving just a cedar post with my sign. Here greed fell. Let it warn the next. Locals trickled by with pies and whiskey, dubbing me the guardian with the gauge and the gavel. And hell, Montana even slipped a Harlan clause into law, mandating consents before any HOA redraws lines. Me, sipping rye by the fire that night, pondering if I'd gone vigilante or just held the mirror to their madness. But looking back, was it justice or just one man's stand turning the tide too far? Did Susan deserve the fall, or was she a product of a system that chews folks up? What about you? Ever tangled with an HOA gone rogue, or think loners like me stir the pot? Drop your take in the comments, share if you'd fight or fold, hit like if this hits home. Let's unpack these land battles together.